Welcome to today's webinar, How to Engage Young Children in Remote Learning. As we wait for a few more minutes for some people to join us today in this webinar, I just wanted to remind you that today's webinar is part of a complete online course, which I'm going to review with you and show you towards the end of the webinar as well. The course is sectioned into these following sections. First, we'll start looking at how the pandemic is affecting education, and then we'll talk about three important stages before, during, and after. So how to prepare for an engaging session before your live remote session, and then what strategies to use during the session, and what things you should do after your session to help you prepare, reflect and analyze, and then prepare for your next future session. We also end with some best practices and some extraordinary ideas from teachers and parents around the world. If you were with us in the last webinar, we covered the second section, which we talked about before, how to prepare for an engaging session. So I hope that you had a chance to join us in our last webinar. If not, then we hope that you can come and take the entire course with us online. Today's webinar, we will be focusing specifically on this section over here, which is during. Best strategies to help keep children engaged during your live session. So let's get started. So as a reminder, the first session, again, this is part of the online course where we talk about how the pandemic has affected education, and I won't have time to cover all of the 5 sessions because it is about 5 to 6 hours long online course. I'm going to show you at the end of the webinar what the course looks like online and the date when it will be launching online. So we have seen that there have actually been some benefits to remote learning. We know that if at the right age, at the right developmental age, with the right resources, that students are able to study anytime, anywhere, as long as they have reliable internet, reliable equipment, resources that they need. Students are also able to independently learn with teachers' guidance as needed. Again, it depends on the child's age and about also the learning environment that they have at home. Students can learn at their own pace. And also there are so many tools that are available for staff, students, and teachers to use to build these own virtual communities. And mostly some of these tools are generally intuitive and don't need too much training to start using them. In the last webinar, which we covered, we did talk about some of the tools that teachers are now using to engage their kids online. In the online course that we've prepared for you, we go into detail into all of the different categories of tools that teachers are using now as well. Other benefits that families are staying in close proximity together. So we know that it's very challenging because a lot of us don't have that enough space at home to be able to designate learning spaces, but staying close in proximity to your kids, between the children and the families, is helping to build that bond. Siblings will remember these struggling times together, and then parents are learning with their kids. So a lot of the times previously, when the children used to go to school or go to preschool, Parents don't often know exactly how the children are learning, whether it's through play or all of these different curriculum strategies that teachers are using. But now many of the parents, even though they're not inside the screen, the video or the screen for the live sessions, they are around and they are watching and they're learning. And to the least, they are understanding the difficulties and the challenges and the hard work that teachers are putting in to prepare for these sessions. But there are also many disadvantages as well from the boredom or from the disengagement, and we hope that some of the things that we talk about today will prevent this from happening at least too often. So there are many drawbacks to remote learning. We know that most online tools require high-speed internet, and not all students have access to this. And it's also very disengaging. Children feel disengaged when there's that instability of that high-speed internet. They might stop losing interest. You might feel them disengaged. So definitely there's a big drawback there. And then unless you use video conferencing or you have time to kind of connect with them one-to-one, it's very difficult to monitor the students' progress, isn't it? And for you not to be physically in the classroom with the kids, it means that it's more difficult for you to read their body language, or read their nonverbal, communication cues. So it's definitely more challenging to build those relationships, and it takes more intentional planning to nurture, maintain that relationship both amongst the students and the staff, and between the students and the teachers as well. So taking all of this into consideration, there are a few important takeaways. We know that different learning modes have advantages and disadvantages. We're not here to diss remote learning, so we're not against completely remote learning. We are accepting it, and we are accepting that this is our challenge now. And we know that every era was going to have their own challenge. So who knows? Artificial intelligence may be next. By the way, we are also, as well as launching this course, How to Engage Children in Remote Learning, we are also going to be launching artificial intelligence and its applications in early childhood education. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the dates, about when these courses are going to launch soon. So I'm just reviewing here that in our last webinar, we covered a little bit of this area we talked about before, the stage before, where how to prepare for an engaging lesson. I'm not going to go into this section because we covered a little bit of it in the webinar, and then it's going to be available in the online course as well. But just quickly, what did we talk about last time? We talked about the self-check. We talked about self-check was identifying where I need to build my own skills as an educator, which kind of tools, which kind of software equipment that I need to plan and prepare for an engaging session. In the webinar, a lot of educators shared with us some of the numerous tools that they were using. And in the online course, we're going to go in much more detail, classifying the tools, what things you can use, alternatives for things, and we go to in much more detail into that. Secondly, child development. We talked about even though these courses are held online and they are held remotely, it's still very important. Child development is still very important. So we need to be able to understand where they are on the developmental stage, and how to monitor that progress check as well. In the online course, we also talk about which specific skills they need to be able to engage online as well. So third, it's very important that we talk about their understanding their new environment. We talked a little bit last time in the webinar that they are having a new environment at home. So it's not the same as being in the classroom, but they do have a new environment at home. Their room or their space at home, the access do they have access to a playground? Do they have access to specific resources? What kind of space do they have at home? What other environments are they able to visit? What do they have access to? So understanding what environment they have at home matters a lot. The more you know about what resources they have, what kind of space they have, who the adults are with them at home, the better you'll be at being able to plan for those remote or online sessions as well. And we also talked about partnering with parents. In the online course, in the webinar, in the last webinar, we talked about this a little bit. And in the course, we go into this in a lot of detail. What kind of things to share with parents, how to help them prepare, even what kind of training to give to parents to be able to support children during these remote sessions. And then lastly, we talked about preparing the activity plan itself. So we talked about what kind of play type, what kind of different learning objectives we should focus on, and how to actually plan those activities. So I hope that you enjoyed the last webinar that we held. And if not to worry, all of this is included in the online course as well. So today we're talking about during. What are some strategies to help us keep children engaged during the online session? So let's get started in this section now. First of all, it's very important for us to remember that there's really no right way. So regardless of all of the ideas that we share with you today, it's important for you to be confident that what you plan for your children and your community is the right way. So assuming, of course, that you have done so comprehensive planning using all of the things that we talked about before. So all of the comprehensive planning strategies that we talked about in the earlier webinar as well. And first of all, and this makes a huge difference, before starting any remote session, before starting any event, and this is applicable even for me. Before starting this webinar, it's very important to take a breath, to be present, to be focused, to enjoy the moment now, not to be upset about all the things that you didn't do before, and not to be worried about all the things that you still have to do after your session. You need to bring your attention to the moment now and just take a breath before you start. It makes absolutely a huge, huge difference. Also remember that, of course, the planning, the preparing, the activity planning, all of the stuff that you did before, it makes, of course, it's very important. But don't forget that it's about your passion, your charisma that you bring in during the session. So the excitement, the laughter, the fun, your energy, that still transmits through the camera, right? So bring that energy on, show them that you're excited, right? And that is going to be contagious. So I don't want you to forget about how important your energy still is. I know that you were used to kind of sharing that energy in a physical classroom where they're kind of in close proximity to you, but that still is still relevant now. It can still transcend through digital means. So I don't want you to forget the importance of doing these simple things before you start. Also, we talked about how important it is staying present no matter what happens. So, some funny things may happen, and it's just, it's about, laughing and being in the moment and just enjoying the now and not worrying. Because if we start thinking about, the repercussions of what's happening, of what could happen tomorrow, it's really overwhelming for all of us around the world. So, let's just enjoy what we have now and the moments that we have now. Also, it's very important to stick to your routine. So routines really replace chaos with the reassurance that that life is kind of unfolding as it's supposed to, and routines help develop the prefrontal cortex in the child's brain, so the child kind of knows what to expect. So if you're starting your online remote learning sessions in a certain, singing a certain song or playing a certain game, try to keep to that routine every time. The children will start knowing what to expect, and that will increase likelihood of keeping them engaged during those sessions. So not only during your session, but also encouraging parents to keep within that routine even before or after, your session. So trying to maintain your routine yourself and trying to keep the parents also to maintain somewhat a routine at home is extremely important to help kids be engaged. And then we've found also, I mean, we've been with, I've personally been with preschools and schools, helping them and working with teachers and directors since June. Here in the United States, preschools opened uh, with the new applying the new COVID guidelines in late June and the first week of July. So we've seen that it's been a journey for kids, and in the beginning, 4 or 5 years old kids had faced a lot of difficulty staying engaged, but sticking to those routines and applying some of the strategies that I talked about the last webinar and today, it really has, we've seen a big difference. We've seen teachers get more confident. We've seen children more acclimated, understanding the routine, and now starting to get engaged. So don't give up. Don't think that something, if you feel good about what you're doing, but not all the kids are engaged, I'm sure that you can also see, if you've been doing this for a while now, how that's starting to change as well. Early on in the session, it's very important to get personal. So making that personal connection, this is something that was applicable face-to-face as well. I don't know if you had come to some of our courses, especially in the cash level 3 diploma, or our advanced certificate in early childhood education. We talk a lot about making that personal connection with children as soon as they walk in the door, right? So and that same thing, that same strategy applies here during the remote session. So how do I make it personal? When you know personal information or some background information about that child, then you are able to make a personal remark that immediately gets the child's attention early on in the session. So if you know, for example, information about something interesting that they did over the weekend, maybe you know that their grandmother visited, or they had the road trip somewhere, or maybe that they did a certain fun activity at home. So maybe the certain information, and that's why communication with parents is so important, not about just the logistical stuff, but just about the regular stuff that the child is doing, because you need that information to make that personal connection. Now, what if you don't? What if you don't have that information? Then you can find something in their environment, something that you can see. Maybe you can comment on something that you see in their background, something in their room, something in their environment, maybe even something that they're wearing. If not, it can just be how they're smiling. You can find information that will help you make that personal connection. Make an effort to make that personal connection, even if it's with just one sentence. Try to do that with every one of the children early on during the session. It will help kind of create that little rope of attention, that connection between the two of you that you will need then to continue your remote session as you go. Also, surprise. The element of surprise is very important. Do not underestimate the element of surprise. It can be something that silly that you wear, that you do. It could be something that they didn't expect. It could be like a guest they didn't expect. It could be a guest in terms of a puppet, in terms of a toy. The element of surprise is very, very important. In my kids' remote learning session, their Spanish teacher suddenly, surprised the kids and decided to start with a 5-minute low impact cardio workout in the beginning of the show. None of the kids were expecting it. She just broke out and started doing all of this workout, and started using Spanish words to count the exercises, to describe which part of the body the exercise was working. So she was in one move, she was saying, oh, this is working your core in Spanish. The kids were shocked. Some of them laughed. Some of them maybe thought that it was silly, but that element of surprise, just brought that level of engagement as well. So whatever it is that you do, even if it's like a red nose that you put on, anything, but don't underestimate the power of surprise. It's also very important to help maintain social bonds. So for example, if you have a group of 6 to 8 children, ideally, and you know that there are pairs or groups of those kids that used to like to play together, or that may like to play together now, right? So maybe you know that you have 2 little boys that were friends, last year in class. You can put them together in a Zoom breakout room, right, with their friends. Consciously creating opportunities for children to connect with each other, that just makes them so excited. This is something that my teacher tried with my son as well. I've seen parents talk about as well. So the parents said that when their teachers put them in small breakout rooms and allow the friends to kind of say hello to each other, or do a little game with each other, and play just in a mini online play date. And even if that lasted for 2 to 3 minutes in the morning, or if it was part of the morning circle, or like a morning activity, that set the scene for the rest of the session. It made a huge difference. Parents have told us that it's just the day went much better after that, if the teacher kind of started it that way. Also, making it an effort to start having fun early. So start with some interesting games, engage them right off the bat. And in our online course, unfortunately, I don't think that we'll have time to cover it today, but in our online course, we we give many ideas for in games. We've asked teachers, parents from all over the world to give us some ideas about what things they've done with kids of all ages. So we cover games for toddlers, preschoolers, and young children as well. Also, make sure that you have a schedule. I mean, we talked a little bit about a routine, but during your not a routine for the entire day, but a schedule for your sessions, and try to stick with that schedule and maintain that schedule. Try not to change that. You can start off with a morning meeting and do a game. Then you can start with a seated activity, and then do a transition game, and then some more academic work with seated activities, another break time. And then this is just like an example of what like a schedule might look like. Of course, it needs to be adjusted depending on the age and developmental stage of your kids. Also, we found that a rough time frame between 9:30 and 2 p.m. is about good for not only for the kids, but also for the parents to manage. And of course, most children will need much shorter days depending on their age and many other factors, like depending on, do they actually have, the designated space? Do they have the tools? Are they sharing computers or laptops between themselves and other siblings? So there's a lot of other, things that come into that you need to consider to be able to plan those days, which I'm sure that if you've been doing this for a while, that I'm sure that you're doing now. Also, remembering not to keep kids for more than 40 minutes during a live session. And usually, depending also on the age and the attention span of the children, they might need a break every 10 to 30 minutes to move around. We talked a little bit about not to have too big of a class, about 6 to 8 children. And there's many reasons for this. I mean, even though that it's an online session where you can kind of invite more people to join into the class. The problem is if you have more than 8 children, it's difficult for you to be able to see and monitor their body language. So I'm hoping that you might be sharing your screen, and you might be looking at their camera screens right on the side, or on a column, or maybe on a couple of columns on the side of your screen. But for example, when children, if they put their hand up, not all of them know how to use the keyboard controls to put their hands up electronically, right? So we have heard of many parents frustrated if their child is kind of putting their hand up and you can't really see them if there are too many children. And also it becomes very difficult to do all of the things that we talked about before, making that personal connection, maintaining those social bonds between the children. So it becomes very difficult to do all of the strategies to help engage children. So we really recommend keeping the class size under 8 if possible. It's very important to continuously focus on the positive. So even if your child is kind of, remind parents even, I mean, even if the children are complaining, or even if the parents are complaining, it's fine. Pointing out that, appreciating just the fact that they showed up sometimes, it's just that much is enough. So for example, we've been seeing how teachers, for example, if you have children who are joining in late, or who came in 5 minutes or 10 minutes late to a morning session, rather than asking them why they were late, or not to be late next time. I don't want you to do that. Just say thank you for coming. Thank them, say thank you for showing up, or I'm just happy that you could be able to join. This is not the time for us to be punitive or asking children to kind of our parents to stick to. We just now our whole approach needs to change. We need to continuously support and appreciate each other just for doing the best that we can, and not being keeping parents or teachers to come to hand in certain things or be on time. I'm sure that's important perhaps for older children, but for young children we don't want anything to kind of put them off or to disengage them or to discourage them from showing up next time. So when you thank them or continuously focus on the positive, that encourages children and gives them that calming, positive, loving, nurturing environment. What we want to provide even during the remote sessions. Also encourage movement. I mean, I talked a little bit earlier about almost every 10 to 20 minutes having some kind of exercise. So considering, even encouraging parents to put in the computer or the tablet on a raised surface so that the children can stand. Also, talking to parents to see if they can have more than one seating alternative. So maybe a chair, maybe those big bouncy balls, maybe some pillows on the floor. So allowing children with more than one option to help them kind of keep moving around and changing the way they're sitting or standing. That makes a big difference. And also doing your continuous exercise and games during the session. So, for example, one of the teachers I know plays peekaboo, right, or hide and seek with the kids during the live sessions, where she encourages them, that she wants to make sure that she can't see them in the camera. So they have to hide so she can't see them through the camera, just to encourage their body to kind of move around and do some activity. We do in our online course, as I reminded you, we cover many, many, many ideas for games and things that you can use for during your sessions. It's also important to understand that there's a difference between the physical activities and something called refueling activities. So you need refueling periods. This includes hugs, outdoor fun, dance parties, arts, crafts, cookings. These are called refueling. So you need these to kind of compensate with all of the online sessions, the remote live sessions that they've been doing. So try to talk with parents and encourage them to include at least 3 hours of these kinds of activities during the day, so that they're refueled and balanced. Because if kids don't have this balance, then it's very difficult for them to kind of continuously engage. I'm sure that you've also experienced this as well with too many Zoom calls and online meetings and online sessions. Just being on the computer all the time is extremely draining. And if you don't have that balance, if you don't have even yourself those refueling activities, you don't have that energy to kind of come back and to engage. So you need it, and the kids need it as well. Do not underestimate the importance of positive feedback. So I want to give you an example. So in one of the parents that I know has some remote sessions for her daughter. And for science, the teacher sends in some activities, right? Some worksheets every week for the child to do. The child is about 6 years old. And the child in the beginning took those worksheets and those activities very seriously. She put in effort to complete the activity for her science teacher and hand it in. But over several weeks, the science teacher was not giving any feedback to the child. She wasn't grading the work. She wasn't giving any feedback to the child. And guess what happened? Now, science is the session that this child likes the least. So don't underestimate how important still your positive feedback. And so giving each child, that a few words of making it positive. So not just, of course, even just a smiley face or a heart or a star is nice, but taking a few moments to give some more personal feedback to the child on whatever work they're submitting is extremely important, because as you'll notice throughout all of these strategies that we're talking about today, it's really about building that emotional connection. Right now, we're during this pandemic, of course, cognitive development, of course, math, science, literacy, all of that is still important. But now, so there lies some more weight on the importance of building those social emotional skills and developing that social emotional nurturing environment, that relationship between you and your children. Because if we don't have that right now, we need to help build that resilience for the kids. And also, we talked about the routine, how important the routine is. I showed you what a sample schedule might look like, but just be flexible. You might, you might want to change a certain schedule because the weather is nice and maybe all of your kids have access to a small playground or some play area. So you may want kids to kind of do something outdoors. So be ready to be a little bit flexible. But also you need to make that assessment about what your child can handle, right? So you want to be balancing between, not being chaotic and being, ad hoc with your schedule, but maintaining that routine, but then adding that additional flexibility depending on the environment. So you need to find that sweet spot, right? That balance, the balance between the two, and you'll get there. If once you're getting the hang of it, and you are getting better at planning and conducting your remote sessions, you will start to feel that gut feeling. And I want you to listen to that gut feeling, because as child development experts, you need to trust that gut feeling sometimes, right? Also, you need to understand that the purpose of technology did not change. The purpose of technology is still the same. It is to enhance communication. It is to enhance whatever you're teaching, right? So your priority during the virtual or remote or live sessions is to make a connection with the kids, and everything else comes second. So this makes a huge difference between passive and interactive, synchronous and asynchronous learning. In the webinar, we talked a little bit about the different tools for preparing for sessions, right? And I promised you in the online course, we go a lot of detail into talking about synchronous and asynchronous learning. But going back to the example that I gave you with the science teacher, surprisingly, this science teacher with this particular child, she not only doesn't give feedback for the worksheets, she is pre-recording all of the sessions, right? So they're not live. It's not interactive, it's passive. Now, pre-recording sessions is good for specific reasons. We still, if you have a choice, if you are able to, then please stick to the live sessions so that you can have that element of interactiveness between you and the kids. And having the pre-recorded, you need to make that choice. And we hope that you don't use pre-recorded sessions unless you have to, right? Because I know that some teachers, they want to make it perfect. And they think that, okay, if I pre-record the session, then I can take out the mistakes or the fumbles, or I can edit those things out. But your preschoolers or your children don't care about making it perfect, right? They want you. They don't want the perfect you. And your class is still, albeit virtually, but your class is still your family, your classroom family, right? So you really want to think about when to use those pre-recorded sessions. And of course, you can still have pre-recorded sessions, and I think that I'm going to talk a little bit more about when to use them. But right now we're having a flipped classroom model, right? Where we are we are sending students resources such as text, videos, podcasts, whatever, and activities, and then to give them some background knowledge and to give them some preparation. And then they come into the live sessions for you to, as a continuation of what resources or what you've provided them. So let's take a little bit deeper look about what the flipped classroom looks like. So the flipped classroom means that here's before, here's during, and here's after. So before, where students, you're sending them something. So of course you're depending on the age. So if young children, you may be sending them a kit. And we talked a little bit about the kits in our last webinar as well. But you may be sending them some resources, some ideas for activities. So you're sending them something before. And then during the sessions, this is where hopefully they're now applying some of the ideas that are related to those resources that you provided them, and now you're kind of applying it during the session. You're making it interactive. You're helping them to discuss those with you and among their friends and the breakout rooms. You're playing games. You're keeping with that. So you're doing all of these things during, and then after, then they go back after and they are maybe completing some additional work. Maybe there's some knowledge check or skill check that's happening afterwards. And you can notice that the things that are in the orange section over here, these are in class or in virtual class, right? And the sections at the bottom in the gray area here are out of class. So I think that the flipped classroom is something that we're following even in our course, how to plan for how to engage children in remote learning. We talked, last webinar, we talked about the before, and then today we're talking about the during. And then it's very important to reflect and do all of the things about the after. So I hope that I'll give you a glimpse of the things that are happening after the class as well later on. When can I use pre-recorded sessions? Like I said, it's not like never. So there are specifically, for example, maybe you are preparing a tutorial or a short lesson, right? Maybe there are some online tools or resources that you want to help families to prepare, help to understand how to use. Then you can maybe consider recording a tutorial. Also, it may be the case that some kids were not able to come to something or not able to join on something. You may think about recording the session for them. So you want to really think consciously about when to use the pre-recorded sessions and when to use the live sessions. Also, when you're having your remote or in sessions or live sessions, you really need to respect the need for different forms of play. So we talked a little bit about this on our last webinar. You all probably know all the different kinds of play, the unoccupied, solitary, onlooker, parallel, associative, cooperative, and you want to really consciously to try to plan in every one of your sessions as many types of play as possible. And, whether it's onlooker, maybe just kind of watching you play with or do like a puppet show or reading a book or something. But then during parallel play or associative or cooperative play, even that is possible when you are putting them, for example, into breakout rooms with their friends or with some other children to work on something or to try to play something together. So there's a lot of different things. If you kind of consciously think about, okay, does my activity plan hit all of the developmental areas? So does it hit, for example, social, emotional, math, language, learning? So you can plan your activity that way, but then kind of analyze it again. Okay, is my online activity plan also hitting all of these different types of play as well as all of the developmental areas as well? And also understand that the classroom does not define you as a teacher. I know that it's very difficult still being, having that responsibility as a teacher. We're so used to having a classroom, but you're still a teacher, you're still an educator, and the classroom does not define you. I want you to visit this website for the National Geographic. They are a huge number of teachers, science, biology teachers, and ocean educators, videographers, wildlife biologists. I want you to see how they plan for their sessions. None of their sessions are in the classroom, yet they are some of the most fantastic teachers and educators. You can go online to the National Geographic website, go to some of these sessions, and of course, although that we're not only science teachers, but there's a lot that we can learn from their passion, from their energy, from their creativity, and how they are innovatively creating lesson plans and activity plans while being, a teacher in our new classroom, which is the whole entire world. So don't let that put you down, not having a classroom. So as a reminder, in the next, I'm going to get to your questions and see if anybody has questions in a minute. But in the online course, we do cover after. So what are some of the reflective and analysis steps that we can take to to plan and to have future lessons? And it's very important which includes, we talk about how to do some child assessment through remote learning, how to get some feedback from parents, how to become a reflective educator ourselves, how to reflect on how well we're doing online remote sessions as well. So we talk all about that. And then in the last session, so session 5, this is where we list huge number of games, activities, examples, best practices that we've seen other teachers do. So we show you, we have videos of teachers doing some online remote sessions, some great sessions. We have examples, we have resources that you can download to use. And so I hope that you can take those in our session. Okay, then of course, when you finish all of the sections, There is a quiz at the end of the session as well. So you have to, of course, get a minimum of a 70% passing rate in order to get the certification. So now, but just before I go to your questions, I'm going to quickly show you what the online course will look like. So we are really excited to announce that on the 10th of November, you're going to be having access to this course on our new platform, which we are working together with the Global Childhood Academy. The Global Childhood Academy will offer all of Arabian Child's courses. They will be online. We have about 21 courses in English and about 22 courses in Arabic that will launch in a couple of weeks. And then many courses will be added on a monthly basis. So when you do log in, you'll be able to see this platform over here. So you have access to the intro video here. And you have all of your sections. So as you know, you have these 5 sessions. So you'll see that you have under session 1, you will have the lecture, the PowerPoint lecture, as well as the video. So each lecture, you will have the recorded video that you can listen to. So you have the option of kind of going through the slides or going through the video. And then you also have the quiz as well. So you have the quiz which is all multiple choice. And of course, like I said, about 70% passing rate. And the great thing is while you are doing this course online, you can see my contact details right under here. So you have access to all of the instructors who helped build this course. And just by clicking the email icon over here, you can shoot us an email if you have questions or comments. You can also, there's a comment section below, and a class forum if you wanted to leave some comments or questions here for your peers or for other students as well. So I really hope that you will join us in taking this online course. You will be, once you've registered, if you've registered for this webinar, then you will be the first people to get invited to take this online course. So before it launches to anyone else, we're going to be emailing you, inviting you to take part. Okay, so now I'm going to stop here and see if you have any questions. I know that we have a few minutes remaining. So I want to encourage you to use the chat feature, and we will